Hi, everyone. Welcome to Off the Rak, conversations on transformative leadership with yours truly, Walt Rakowich. Many of you know that in my former life, I was Chief Executive Officer of Prologis, and since then, the author of Transfluence, a book about the opportunity that we all have to make a transformative influence on the lives of those that we serve. If you've been following my Off the Rak series, it's great to be reconnected with you. And if you're new, I'm just really happy that you're here today. On a monthly basis, I host conversations with some of the most thoughtful voices, guiding leaders to be more influential, more human in the workplace. And if you're interested in checking out previous episodes, there's a link below so that you can become more familiar with me and the guests that I've had on the show. Today, I'm really thrilled to have Mike Duke join me. Mike's a great friend and former colleague of mine in the CEO Forum. He's a former CEO of Walmart, which is, of course, the largest company in the world. Mike officially retired in 2014 and now lives with his wife near me here in Naples, Florida. Listen closely, because I think what you will learn a lot from Mike. I think what Mike has to say will be tremendous. And so, Mike, I just want you to know it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Walt. It's an honor for me to be with you.
And, we're not that far apart right now. I think we may be in opposite neighborhoods doing this.
Right.
So I actually want to start off with a little bit of fun. So you and I live in the same club here in Florida, and we have had the opportunity to play not enough, but a few rounds together. And I am curious, now that you've left Walmart, is your handicap any better today than it was way back when you were working with Walmart?
That's a good starting question. And the answer is yes, I am playing a little better golf now. Yeah, it's really interesting because I am getting to play a little more than I did when I was working at Walmart. As a matter of fact, I don't recall really ever meeting a great retailer who was also a great golfer. It's hard to be really good in the retail business and really good on the golf course. But since I have retired, I am playing a little more, and my game is a little bit better than it was when I was working.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Mike. I want you to know my game is actually a little better too, but my frustration level is higher. I think when your expectations go up, you get a little more frustrated as to how you're not playing while
That's
you're
true
not
also.
playing.
I agree with that.
So you started with Walmart in the mid 90s.
Right.
As an executive where you ran the U.S. distribution network. And then I believe you ran international. But even before Walmart, you had a distinguished career in retail. I mean, you've been in retail pretty much your whole career. Mm-hmm. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your background, Mike, and what led you to get into the retail business in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting story because, and I'll dial way back even to my high school years, because that was the starting point of thinking about a career in retailing, because it might even be unusual, some of my background to get into retailing. But I'll start with a great mentor of mine was my high school physics teacher, and I loved math and science. And Mr. McDaniel, my physics teacher in high school, he started by telling me how important it was to leverage the God-given strength that you have. And it would say, Mike, he said, it's important to really use the strengths that God has given you. There are certain talents that you have, and use those. A lot of people want to work on their weaknesses first, but his encouragement was to leverage your strengths. And he said, so I think you have three strengths. He said, I think you like math and science, and you like people. And I said, you're right on. I said, I really love math and science, and I love people. I'm not that good in reading and writing, and I really don't like being by myself. I want to be with people, and because I was involved in a lot of sports and clubs and organizations in school. He said, got it. He said, I'll give you three bits of advice. He said, I know you're from a poor family. You've got to work your way through college. And since you're going to be working your way through school, I'd recommend going to a state school, and I'd recommend Georgia Tech. He said, it's a great math and science school. Second, he said, I'd recommend you major in industrial engineering because that's people and process. It's really a combination of people and process. It'll use your math and science and people skills. And he said, third, then after graduation, I'd recommend you go into a service industry. He didn't say retailing, but he said service. He said, rather than manufacturing or other things, think about a service industry. So it's interesting, Walt. I only had one college in mind, and fortunately, I got in. I had no backup plan. I had no contingency to get. If Georgia Tech didn't work out, I'm not sure what I would have done. I only had one major, that was industrial engineering. And after graduation, I've only had one career, and that's been serving people. And so then, so that led me, through college. When I was interviewing then after college, as I was graduating, I met a second wonderful mentor and became my first boss and became a lifetime career mentor. And his name was John Whitenauer. And at the interview that I went to, he told me all about retailing. He was leading a retail company in Atlanta, Georgia. And he told me about retailing, and he said, it's all about people. And he said, if you love people and you take good care of people, he said, I promise you a great career in retailing. And he said, your math and science and your engineering degree and all of that will also benefit you a great deal. And he said, retailing's fast paced. There are a lot of quantitative skills that will benefit you. But he said, the most important skill will be with people. And he said, I promise you, if you take care of people, you'll have a great career in retailing. It's interesting, of course, that was many years ago. When I retired in 2014, John Whitenauer came to my retirement celebration, and he said, I promised you that you would have a good career in retailing if you took care of people. And I've always remembered that interview and that conversation. And that's how I got in the retail business. And, I spent a number of years before Walmart in divisions of businesses that now make up what's Macy's. Back in those days, a lot of these were regional chains that were maybe owned by a parent company, but they would operate under local names like Rich's in Atlanta, Georgia, or the Heck Company in Washington, D.C. Over the years, like in a lot of businesses, there was a desire to rebrand and create a national companies, which it became really Macy's now nationwide. And I was very, very blessed to have great mentors, great opportunity in Atlanta, Washington, D.C., St. Louis. I spent a lot of time in logistics, supply chain, operations, and other general management areas of retail businesses before it led me to Walmart, which was in 1995, as you said.
Well, the supply chain part of it really tied into your industrial engineering, I would think.
It did a great deal.
Yeah.
A great deal of that whole focus, even in academics at Georgia Tech, really tied in very, very well with industrial engineering, with supply chain and logistics.
Yeah, Walmart is certainly one of the best companies in the world at logistics, and there's a reason for that. It's funny, Mike, you were talking about why things happen, in retail. People ask me all the time, well, how did you end up in real estate? I said, well, I'm not really sure. I just knew that I like touching and feeling something and seeing something. And I like the people. So then I went into the business. But,
Right.
the funniest things, you get a little bit of advice and it makes, a whole difference in how your career unfolds.
It sure does. I think that's why also mentors, for particularly those starting out in business, having wise mentors is very, very important. Like I said, I was very blessed to have some great early mentors in my career.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So for those of you who may not know, Walmart is the largest employer in the world. I think it's over 2 million employees today.
Right.
It's something like that, right, Mike? Yeah.
I think it's around 2.4 million now.
2.4 million now. That's a lot of people. So Mike, you got a lot of experiences with people. I mean, you talked about it as being one of the driving forces as to what you did. What do you think some of the essential traits are for leaders to have when operating large companies? And by the way, I would appreciate if you'd address not just large companies. Are those the same traits that we ought to be thinking about, whether they be a large company, small company, medium-sized company? Because there's all different types of people listening in today.
Right. Well, first, to that second part of the question, I do think this applies across the board with any company if there are people involved. And almost every company has people involved. And it can be, a few people, or it can be 2.4 million people. But, it's interesting because a similar question I was asked last week. I was speaking to a group at our church here in Florida, and someone asked me, so I'm going to give the same answer because the questions are almost identical. And I do think with people involved, and when you're in a leadership role, it's really, really important to consider the important characteristics of leadership when you're in that kind of a role with a lot of people involved. I think that in particularly my experience, particularly with Walmart, where there's so many people involved, I think it's even more critical. And I'd say leadership characteristics start with integrity. And I really think that a leader has to be very conscious of the fact that they are being watched. They're being listened to, but they're being watched all the time. And acting with integrity is critically important as the single most important characteristic of leadership. And when there are a lot of people involved, the responsibility for that leader to act with integrity every day, realizing that you just can't have a bad day. You can't say that I've got a bad day in the area of integrity today. It's just not a situation in leadership that's allowed. And because people are watching, and that's why it's important. It's important to talk about integrity, but it's even more important that every action you do is an action of integrity. The second thing I think is also then respecting all people, respecting every job, realizing the importance of the truck driver, the cashier, the person picking up shopping carts at a Walmart store, and treating people with respect. It's really treating people with the golden rule and the way they want to be treated. That's so critical in a people-oriented business that I think it's important to make everyone feel important, and that to have them want to do the best job they can, whatever that job is. And then I think the third thing that's also important is just realizing again that you as a leader are being watched, and you should be an example. Don't be afraid to be an example for other people. Be an example of the way you communicate, the words that you use, your approach with people, how you treat customers, how you work, your work ethic, your striving to be better than you were the day before. So be an example of all areas of leadership. And I think acting with integrity, respecting other people, and then being an example is the key to that. And it applies to leaders of all businesses. But I think if you happen to have 2.4 million people in your company, it's really important.
That's so true. This word integrity. I remember when I took over at Prologis, I had a conversation with John Mack, who was the CEO of Morgan Stanley, and I asked him what the three most important things to him were, and
Right.
he mentioned humility, he mentioned honesty, and he said in this day and age, a banker needs to have a sense of humor. But I remember tying that sense of humor into really the word human,
Right.
which is what people really want to see. And I think about you're respecting all people, making them feel important. That's humanness. That's really what that's what he's talking about when he meant cracking a joke. And then this word integrity is just so important, isn't it? And then living it and walking it and just showing it as an example to people. I mean, it's just so critical. Those are great things. And I agree with you that you could use those three things in any size company, although the more people you have, the more critical it is, right?
Right. That's right.
So I read somewhere, Mike, where you said that a primary goal at Walmart was to try to link corporate culture with considerate people. And I've never heard those two things tied together, and I can't even remember where I read it, but I find them really interesting. And so really what that means is that you really need to hire good people. You know, we all make our mistakes, no question about it. But, you know, can you explain to the audience why, you know, people are so important to culture, but also how do you find the right people? I mean, when you have 2.5 million people working in a company, how do you try to find the right people to work in that company?
Well, Walter, of course, and you know this from your role as the CEO too. You know, it starts with the CEO setting the tone, and then you could think about the direct reports to the CEO are critical. Those particular senior executives are critical as a part of this. And so even making decisions about who gets promoted to executive vice president, who gets to be the CFO of the company or other roles in the company that report to the CEO. And there has to be an alignment of culture and values with those. And so making decisions about who gets each job at the senior level is a critical part of obviously what a CEO does. But then each one of those leaders has to continue to make that decision about recruiting people and having people that are aligned with the culture and the values of the company. And, you know, Walmart does have some unique culture. I've never heard of another company that said we've got the same culture as Walmart, because I think it's kind of like our DNA that there's some differences in every company. And sometimes there are big differences in companies. You know, Walmart has a lot different culture than would say Amazon or would Apple. So it's important that people are aligned with the culture, they understand the culture of the company, and that they support it and want to be a part of it. I do remember, and I won't mention names in this case, but I can remember a number of years ago, there was a senior executive at Walmart that joined the company, came in at a VP level, and within the first few weeks, I could really tell in meeting with this person that he was not aligned with the culture. He didn't really feel like the culture was a good fit for him. It ended up he lasted only about a year, and he knew from the beginning that he had made a mistake and the company had made a mistake. So you can sometimes make mistakes and have people that are not aligned, that don't support the values and the culture. And it's just important to solve those mistakes and move on. It doesn't mean compromising the culture or compromising the values. And I think that's a mistake companies can make, to say, you know, this person is really smart, really talented. They bring a lot great experience. And so we're going to compromise our values to accommodate this person. That's a very serious mistake. Sometimes if the person can't be aligned, it really means that person needs to find somewhere else to take their career.
Yeah. Well, speaking, you know, Mike, you talk about values. Can we dig in a little bit more on that? Can you, I know values have always been important to Walmart. They've always been, and you all have the reputation in the marketplace as being a values-based company. Can you talk a little bit more about how the values-based leadership shaped the company over time? You know, how did it have an impact on your growth and your success?
Sure. I think I'd really say the values-based leadership started with the founder, and that's why the company got off to a great start. Walmart was founded by Sam Walton. The first store opened in 1962, but the company really didn't grow a lot until the 1970s. And really that foundation period of the first, say, 10 years of the company, the values and culture Sam was building at that time while he was building the business itself. And he created a great company with a great foundation of values, even in that period of the 60s and early 70s. And then, of course, the company grew in the 70s and 80s. But again, I give credit to the founder. I didn't have a chance to meet the founder because Sam Walton died in 1992, and I joined the company in 1995. So we really didn't overlap. But I met so many people, and I watched so many hours of video of Sam Walton talking about the values of Walmart, the beliefs of the company, the culture of the company. And I really think that's why Walmart has been so successful. The second CEO, David Glass, really carried on and really maintained and built on that values organization that Sam Walton created. The third CEO was Lee Scott, and then I was the fourth. And I think we all really wanted and respected what the founder had created. And again, you've already heard me talk about some of those values already. Sam Walton would talk about 4 real basic values of Walmart. And then when I retired in 2014, I think on the day I retired, I probably said something that day about these 4 values. And so that I say them again. Number 1, I've already mentioned, acting with integrity. In everything, acting with integrity is one of the foundational value of Walmart. Second, I've already said too, respecting every individual. And that's every individual that works for the company and every customer so respecting and showing respect for every individual is the second value. The third is critically important, and that is having a passion for our customers and doing all we can to serve customers. And of course, Walmart does that primarily by having great product at low prices. We really are working hard to let customers live a better life through low prices. So serving customers is critical value. And then number 4 is striving for excellence. And if we don't apologize for this, it's meaning that we in every job, we want to be better every day. We want to improve our productivity. We want to improve our sales. We want to grow personally. We want to contribute even more to the company. So striving for excellence means we work hard. We get up early. We get out in the stores. We really do all we can to be a better company, and we strive for excellence. So those are the 4 foundational values that the founder created with Walmart. And I know now that the CEO of Walmart, Doug McMillon, he's probably talking about those 4 values today as he leads Walmart through this next period.
Those are great, Mike. By the way, I love how you talk about we. I still refer to Prologis as we. I've been retired now for 10 years, and I still talk about it as we.
Same, I know.
Because I love the company so much,
Right.
and you love Walmart so much for all good reasons.
Right.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit from values-based leadership to something that will sound very familiar to you. I know you're a man of faith, Mike, man of faith in God, that is.
Right.
And I also know that you believe in servant leadership as a philosophy. What does it mean to you? And you've probably talked about a couple of these things. So if I'm reiterating things you've already talked about, that's fine. Maybe you just repeat them. But what does it mean to you to be a servant leader?
Well, I do think that my desire to personally be a servant leader is grounded in my faith in God. And I think that even over the years, as I've tried to grow with my spiritual foundation, I think it's also helped me to grow in other ways of the way that I live my life here. And I really have come to see that servant leadership is absolutely the best form of leadership for multiple reasons. And I think first, and a really good business reason, is I think a servant leader gets better results, particularly in leading people. And a servant leader, people enjoy being with a servant leader. And I really start with saying that I think in my studies, the greatest servant leader is from the Bible, and it's Jesus Christ. And seeing how Jesus led his disciples, how he talked to people, how he responded when people challenged him, when people disagreed with him even. He maintained humility. If there was anyone that could ever claim arrogance, it could be Jesus, but never a moment. Maintaining humility is an important part of servant leadership. And I think Jesus gave us a great example of that in the way that he kept humble even through difficult times and even when challenged. I think the way that he took care of people, he cared for others first, even more than he cared for himself. And I think that's what a servant leader does. He thinks of others first. It doesn't mean that a servant leader thinks less, puts himself down or herself down. It just means that they think of others and they care for others as a primary part of servant leadership. So, Walt, I think it's, and I didn't come out of Georgia Tech knowing this. This is part of a growth and maturity. I think, as I said, as I grew and matured in life and business and spiritual life, I think I became better understanding of what servant leadership was. Someone could look back in my early days when I first started in retailing, and I probably wasn't a very good servant leader, and I had to learn it and grow in it over time. And as I said, I started to see that that kind of leadership gets better results. So I do think it's a very, very important part of leadership.
Mike, some people might say that servant leaders are too soft. I'm not sure that you would agree with that.
No, as a matter of fact, it would be really even the opposite, because servant leaders are honest. They're completely candid. They can share with people how to improve performance. They can share what the goals are. They're really much more transparent. They're willing to just be completely above board with everyone. They don't really hold back. And I think that's where honest servant leadership cares for people. And when you care and you love people, you want them to succeed. And the best way to succeed is by being honest with them.
Well, I agree. So you mentioned, Mike, that maybe way back when you weren't a servant leader, when you came out of Georgia Tech, but in all the roles you've had, can you talk a little bit about an experience that maybe shifted your philosophy on leadership, or maybe just helped shape you into the leader that you became?
Sure, it'd be hard to pick one, but I'll try to be brief here. I think I saw in my very first boss that I mentioned early on as a mentor the importance of integrity and the importance of dealing with people. And I was sitting in his office one time in the 1970s, and I saw the way he acted with integrity, even in acquiring merchandise, the merchandise that was in short supply, and that he did the right thing no matter what. I saw then along the line in my career, kind of at a midpoint, I was working in Washington, D.C., and I remember an experience working with someone who reported to me. And I learned a lesson from someone that reported to me about empowerment. When this person, she said, "Mike, if you will empower us more, I believe we can get better results." And I remember that conversation. It was probably in the late 70s, early 80s, and I was still growing and maturing. But even as a person reporting to me said, "If you will empower us more, give us more authority, we can get more done, and you will not have to work as many hours." That was a great learning. And I think I was at least willing to listen and try. And as I empowered more in that particular position, my career started to grow and we got better results. Then I think a third would be just seeing the example of leadership that I saw at Walmart. I think as I have matured in my career, I really believe that God brought me to Walmart as I was just a really good fit for the culture of the company, the values that we discussed, and that's why my career could move. So I saw in the senior leaders that I reported to so many examples that I was able to learn from and grow in my time at Walmart.
Mike, is there something or anything in your career that you wish you would have done differently?
I could look back at probably 1,000 mistakes that I've made. That on one hand, I would say if I could have done those differently and not make that mistake. But I have to actually say, on the other hand, I learned more from the mistakes. I think sometimes having a failure can be a better learning experience than just a kind of a theoretical learning. Yeah. And so I probably would say I had plenty of mistakes, plenty of failures, but I think I was benefit to learn from them. But I think if there was one area that I would say that I could have done better and quicker, it would have been probably in addressing performance issues that at times just moving faster when seeing something's not working, then just moving faster with communicating, faster with resolving the issues. So sometimes speed in resolving performance would be one of those that I would probably say I should have done differently. And I think at times I learned from those delays, and I'd look at my delay and say I should have moved faster.
Yeah, right. But you, as you say, everything, all of the adversity that you have in your career is probably the best learning experience that you have. So you in retrospect, you wouldn't trade it for anything. But
That's right.
but
Even
during
my
while you're
failures.
yeah, as I think about climbing the ladder at Prologis and the other places that I was at, probably the biggest thing for me was not letting go of people quicker.
Right.
Hoping that they would work out and just
Exactly.
knowing that they weren't. and
Right.
and 90% of the time you're right. Your intuition's telling you the right thing.
Right.
Anyway, Mike, last couple of questions. We've got a number of younger professionals that tune in. What advice would you have for them, whether it be personal advice, career advice, whatever comes to your mind? What would you tell a younger person today?
I'd probably start with what my high school physics teacher said. Uh, Come to understand what your God-given talents are and leverage those talents. Use the gifts that you've been given. And they can be gifts that you use at home, gifts in your neighborhood, or gifts in your career, but leverage your strengths as a high priority. And then I would say, kind of along that line, is always make your first priority to in your career, that is to do the best you can in whatever job you're being paid to do right now. Make your first priority to be the best you can be in whatever job you're doing. I've seen over the years, sometimes, particularly young people, will want to focus on the next job. They want to be thinking about their career path and what steps they need to take to get the big job. And I say the most important step in getting in your career path is to do the best you can in the job you're in. Focus first on your contribution, not on your compensation, and focus on your contribution more than your future. Your contribution in the job you have is first priority.
That goes right along with what you said in terms of values of excellence.
Right.
Be excellent at whatever you're doing, right?
It sure does well.
And things will take care of themselves.
Right.
So, Mike, one last question. I ask all of my guests this question. I think gratitude makes us better people. When we show gratitude for something, it humbles us as we honor and we give credit to others. And what are you most grateful for, Mike?
Well, I've said I have been blessed in so many ways, and I really start, with my family. I think I've been blessed with a wonderful. My wife Susan and I just celebrated our 53rd year of marriage. Our children, their spouses, grandchildren, and other family that I've been blessed with. And I think that even in the experiences that our family has had together, with my career moves and where we lived and the opportunities that my career provided, it really was able to be a great blessing for our family. So I really think that, as I saw over time, integrating my faith, my family, and my career benefited all three. I was able to grow in faith and provide great opportunity for my family. And then it also worked out okay for my career at the same time.
It makes for a great life, doesn't it?
Sure does. And I'm surely grateful, as you started off that question with.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike. I have to tell you, I'm grateful to have you on the show today. I really am. You are a special person. And I think there's a lot of great learning lessons that have come out of this this interview. And I just want to thank you so much for being on. You're terrific.
Well, thank you, Walt.
Some time. And thanks, Susan. Thanks, Susan. We still have another, we're 20 years behind you. We're in our 30s in terms of marriage, not 50s. But anyway, we'll get there hopefully someday. And so I want to thank you again, Mike. And I'd like to thank everybody who made the decision to be on to this show today. Hopefully you gleaned some great information from Mike. And I'd like you to keep an eye out for future live stream Off the Rak episodes. And until then, I just would like to encourage everybody to be human, really, just be human, and find a way to have a positive influence on someone around you each and every day. We're all leaders. We don't have to be the CEO of Walmart to be a leader. And I think Mike would confirm that. We lead in everything we do every day, but when we do it, be influential in the lives of the people around you each and every day. Thank you, everybody.